Welcome to day 33 of our 40 Days of Strangers on the Way. I'm so excited to introduce you to one of my favorite Englishmen that I met in America. His name is Paul. Paul, an English redemption story. The beauty of brokenness. Brokenness is often the road to breakthrough. A quote by Tony Evans. "Hi, I'm Paul," the man said as he leaned over his bar stool with a big smile on his face. "Who are you?" I ate dinner in my childhood hometown one night and found myself craving some chocolate for dessert. A very regular occurrence for me. I Googled nearby restaurants and found one that served flourless chocolate cake, my favorite. There was one right across the street. Score. I walked into the charming, dimly lit restaurant, ordered my dessert, and waited at the bar. That's when I met Paul. "I'm Lauren. I noticed you have an accent. Where are you from?" "Guess," he said. "Tell me another sentence so I have a fair shot," I joked. The older gentleman told me something about aluminum, which he pronounced as aluminum, in his Audi. "England," I said. "Yes," he replied joyfully. Paul asked if I knew much about England, and I said I knew a girl who lived in York. Using a wine bottle as his glass, Paul creatively designed a map of England and detailed all of the places he had lived. Manchester, Nottingham, Liverpool, where he got to know the actual Beatles, London, over to Germany, and then to the United States for work. Now retired, Paul told me he consults for a variety of businesses because he really isn't good at being retired. Paul asked what I did, and I shared with him that I work for a church in the area. He said, "How delightful. I met Jesus later in my life when I was 56. That's when I began a real relationship with him. My wife and I used to be a part of a church, but the pastor made some poor decisions, so he ended up leaving. But the beautiful thing about grace, is that it's full of more grace. He worked elsewhere for a while, but now he's back as a full-time pastor." "I love how God redeems," I told him. "Oh yes, it's the neatest thing," Paul remarked. A few years later, I was having some inner struggles with actions I was making. I was really struggling. I didn't know what to do. My old pastor walked me through that time, and he said something to me I'll never forget. "What did he say?" I asked. Suddenly, in the middle of the restaurant, on his high-top wooden chair, tears streamed down Paul's face. "I'm sorry," he said. "I get emotional. My old pastor said, 'Isn't it amazing how a broken man can help another broken man?' Don't you think that's amazing?" I smiled and said, "Absolutely." There's this story in the Bible about this guy named David. This guy was the man, a great king, courageous warrior, and he took down a giant with a small stone. God even called him a man after his own heart. He had failed a few times, though. Murder, adultery, he wasn't the best father. Despite all he did wrong, when he messed up, instead of running away from God, David ultimately turned his face back to him. David owned his mistakes and truly experienced mercy, redemption, and freedom. That night, as I waited for my flourless chocolate cake, Paul taught me that God uses our brokenness and our weakness as well as our strength. Some of the most painful things we experience turn into the most beautiful stories as we help people through similar things. And God doesn't require us to have it all together in order to be on his team. Even when we're still bleeding and broken, he gives us the opportunity to be a part of the healing in another person's life. And I found as that happens, as we step into the other person's brokenness, our brokenness finds purpose, and we actually start to heal too. Let's wonder. Are you bleeding and broken today? It's okay. God is right there with you, holding the pieces. Are you bleeding and broken today? And then let's activate. What one step will you take today to help someone else who is broken too? What one step will you take today to help someone else who is broken too? And then let's yield. I invite you to pray this prayer with me. God, thank you that your grace is perfected in my weakness. 2 Corinthians 12, verse 9. I receive your grace for today and for every situation in my life and in the lives of those I care about. Thank you that you are drawn to humanity's brokenness and that in you, Jesus, I am strong. Thank you for being my refuge and strength. Amen.